Welcome to the Brooklyn Pod with Pooch and Colin. My name is Colin Helwig. Here we are. The Nets are still in kind of a bad spot. We're recording here on December 4th, and, they have one of the worst records in the league, but, they're kind of doing all right. They're kind of doing decently in that, circle of D-rate teams in the lower of the league. Won 2 in a row. They've looked better after pretty much every single game. They've kind of found their way back to being a gritty, smart team that might just spoil another tank, but we will get into that soon. Sure, you guys have noticed Pooch is not with me again today. He's still running for us in Nets Daily. He's helping me behind the scenes here, but he is going to be stepping away from the mic for a little bit as he's dealing with some health issues. Nothing too serious, but he just can't do the show right now. So I'll let him speak more on that later. He'll be active on Twitter when he's ready, and we'll certainly get him back as soon as he's ready. But today, stepping in for him, we have Sharif Phillips-Keaton of NetsWire / USA Today. Sharif's been a good friend on the beat for a couple years now. Just got back in the swing of things, coming back from his own ACL tear, right?
Yeah, ACL, meniscus, LCL, all the stuff. So.
Well, he is back. He is back coming to games. He's back on the show. Glad to have you here, Sharif. How are you doing, man?
Glad to be here. Doing pretty good. I've finally, gotten to the point, as you said, that I can be at the games in person. I'm still, walking around at like 60%, but that's better than being on crutches and stuff. So just glad to be able to get back in the swing of things.
Absolutely, man. We're definitely glad to have you back. Here we are. There's been a lot of NBA buzz, but Sharif, I'll just get right into it. The question that's been on everyone's mind: what was your top song in your Spotify Wrap this year?
The top song? Over the course of the year, I actually haven't looked.
Or Apple Music, if that's your thing.
Oh no! For me, it's definitely Spotify.
Okay.
I actually haven't had a chance to look, but I'll just say recently I've been playing this song "Heat" with Chris Brown and Gunna. I know it's old technically, but it just came up on like my Spotify, like if you do like the smart shuffle.
Yeah.
And I either had never heard the song before, or it's been a while since I heard it. And I'm like, wow, this is, pretty catchy. So that's been what I've been, putting on repeat past week, I would say.
Dude, I'm so embarrassed with my Spotify Wrap every year it comes out, because what'll happen is I'll watch a movie that year, and there will be a song in said movie that I happen to really get behind, and then I'll just like spam it. And then it'll just be like, all right, like here is like the soundtrack to like this movie. I'm not going to say what movie it was because it's too embarrassing. I'll let the audience guess. But yeah, no, it's just like, all right. So did you really like this song, or did you like the movie? And it's like, all right, what did we do this year?
Right.
All right. Now that we got that covered, Nets played in Chicago last night, 2 games in a row. I wrote in my game recap. That's a win streak. I know we barely hit the quota for a statement like that, but they are 2 in a row. I don't know how often we'll get to say that this year, so let's soak it in. Nets win streak right now. But, Sharif, what are you making of this? It feels to me, at least on Twitter, that people are kind of less stressed than they were this time a year ago when they were winning games earlier. There's less of a panic. And do you agree with that? And if so, what do you think's leading to that?
Well, when I survey Nets Twitter, as contentious of a statement as that can be of what Nets Twitter is, but it's funny because obviously the beginning of the season, the Nets won, they lost like their first 7 games, and then they got their first win against a Pacers team who literally there's listing like 8 players, so it was like hopefully you win this game, but. I think recently, you've seen Danny Wolf, get more playing time with, some injuries. You've seen Yegor Zhomin pretty much cracking the rotation, at least as the starter. I think I want to say after like game 8 or game 9 when Ben Saroff got benched. Drake Powell's been showing some things. The only person we've really haven't seen is Nolan Traore, and by all accounts he's doing well in the G League, just has to work on his shooting and taking care of the ball. But beating Chicago is an interesting thing to see, just because Chicago seemed like this team that had finally figured it out, or at least had the kind of lineup, and granted they were banged up last night too, but it just seemed like the game was never really in jeopardy, like as far as like the Nets losing after, just the way MPJ shot the ball and, the emergence of Noah Clowney. I still think, and this is just me, hot take probably, I still think a lot of people are just too gung ho about losing because, I mean, the Nets could have the sixth worst record, end up with the first pick. Like it just, the way the lottery works is just, we've seen the Mavericks get lucky. The Sixers ended up with VJ Edgecombe. Like I try not to get too wrapped up in that stuff, but I think Nets Twitter seems to be a little more calm because the rookies are, showing their stuff right now.
Yeah, I agree. You got to kind of protect your mental peace when it comes to lottery stuff. Looking at all the percentages, thinking of all the different scenarios. There's no direct line to anything, so to get too concentrated on one route or the other is you're gonna end up going crazy. So, and we certainly learned that last year. But totally agree with you on the rookie stuff. I said it I think a billion times last year. I was like, if the Nets win a game and it's because like Dennis Schroeder, Dorian Finney-Smith, and Zaire Williams played great, you're not that excited because what is that building towards? Like odds are, and two of those guys are gone now, but odds are if a veteran has a big game, it's not like he's building on something that will then matter when the Nets are in contention because they're older guys. It's likely they won't be there. However, you win a game on the back of Danny Wolf and Jaeger Dioman and all the young guys. Noah Clowney's been playing super well. Sharp had a solid game off the bench last night against Chicago too. That's something where it's like, all right, maybe we hurt our tank value, but we're I'm seeing things out of young players that will matter when, it is time to contend. It's not like some guys going on and putting on a great performance and, he'll be gone in a year or 2 years. And, it just doesn't matter for the team and its path to try to get to its ultimate goal. So I think that's definitely the youth on the team now matters so much. And we forget the goal of tanking is to get young talent so that you can win. But if you're doing that already, like how mad can you be? You know what I mean? When you're winning with that young talent. So it's almost like a circle.
Yeah, it's interesting because as much as I've seen, Nets Twitter clashing within itself, because some people are like, "Oh, why is Tyrese Martin out there? Why is Terrence Mann out there getting 30 minutes?" And then it's like, you know, as much as I understand you have five rookies, so I think the Nets also put themselves in this position. Like normally teams are trying to incorporate one or two rookies a year if you're just going by, having a first and second round pick. But having five first round rookies, meaning these guys should at least be able to play, but you just don't have enough spots. And I've seen some sentiments that like people can't wait until it's December 15th for the whatever it is, so we can get MPJ out of here, get Terrence Mann out of here, Hayward Highsmith who hasn't even played yet. I mean, you could do all that stuff, but it really doesn't change the fact that this team still isn't that good, even with MPJ potentially playing like an all-star, but obviously
He's
won't
doing it. Yeah,
make
I'll
it.
say it. He's playing like an all-star.
Yeah, just obviously the Nets won't be good enough for him to get real consideration, but I mean, MBJ's playing out of his mind right now.
Dude, he is. Proud feels like I can't think like a patronizing thing to say, but like I am kind of like all you ever heard about this guy was that, like he doesn't pass the ball and he's doing a great job leveraging the attention. He's still hitting his shots, but he's doing a great job leveraging the attention that he is getting, like drawing all these guys out and making the right reads. He's kind of, doing what I think a lot of us wanted to see out of Cam Thomas. So I'm going to get into him next. He's due for an MRI this week. Jordy Fernandez told us. Where do you think that he fits into all this, and does he still fit into all this?
Well, that's actually a very interesting question because I've also seen, I mean, it's kind of hard to not notice that the team, and I think I actually wrote this a couple of days ago, um, the team is slightly better with Cam on the court. I think like in terms of like points or like offensive rating, it's like 1 point, but defense it's like minus 4 points or something like that. So technically, Cam being on the court this season is a negative player in terms of net rating. But then when you look at MPJ, and I didn't isolate for like when it's MPJ without Cam, but just overall for the season, I think the Nets are like almost 10 points better in offensive rating with MPJ on the court versus off, but their defensive rating is like 5 points worse, but that means he's still a positive five. I think when you look at the way this team is playing with MPJ while Cam is sidelined, it seems like the offense is just more streamlined in that you only have to worry about one person really getting their shots. And maybe that's easier for this group of guys to work around versus like, Cam Thomas can go out there and drop 20 or 30 a night. But he tends to work more off the dribble than MPJ does. And I know like off the dribble players can kind of disrupt the flow of an offense because if they start, getting going, guys tend to just stand in the corner. But like you see MPJ, you see him, he's not moving all around the court like Steph Curry per se, but his off ball movement has been pretty impressive with the way he curls. And like if he doesn't get the ball at the top of the key, he'll turn that into a cut down the lane. And if that doesn't draw anybody, he's more willing to move without the ball. So I think when CT comes back, if he can kind of adopt some of that into his game, I think you could see a special 1-2 punch between these two guys, especially because Cam is one of the better scorers in the league when he gets going. But yeah, that off ball movement has been really helpful for the Nets recently.
Yeah. I mean, I've defended Cam Thomas for a long time, just as if not for his game, just for a entertainment factor, because the Nets haven't been the best team in the last couple years. So, he's a reason to tune in. However, I just can't like watching how the offense has looked and how the ball is hopping. A lot of the things that you talked about, I'll just say like I'm kind of not looking forward to Cam Thomas being reinserted back into this offense. Especially you look at how the team looked. Now maybe it was just they changed things and they started to like mesh better coincidentally around the same time that he left, but the ball's hopping right now, setting screens for MPJ all over the place. A lot of DHOs starting with Claxton, Danny Wolf doing a lot of the same. It's good basketball and it's getting the Nets points despite the fact that they don't have a lot of like bucket getters out there. And from a watching standpoint and a Nets being better standpoint, it's better for the team. It's just better. Cam Thomas is like I can't think of it. Like time with the ball in his hands is almost double that of Michael Porter Jr. And anyone who's watched the NBA the last few years will tell you, you don't want guys sitting and holding the ball. Like that's not how a modern offense runs. That's not how the Nets I think want their offense to run. So I'm really not sure where he fits into this. Like the talent is there, it'll always be there. But what's working right now for the Nets, what's going on right now for the Nets is working, and I think Cam Thomas could contradict that. So I don't think they're gonna trade him. I think his value has never been lower, so it would be stupid to. However, I look forward to seeing how Jordy Fernandez tries to solve this puzzle, I guess, because it does seem like a puzzle to me. I don't think you want to mess up what's going on right now.
Well, that's actually I think what you hit on with the whole whether they're going to keep him or trade him. I think that's also why this situation is interesting because if you look at it from the Nets perspective, obviously when Cam Thomas is healthy, he's going to play. He's still like the second, third, however you want to think of Noah Clowney, Nick Claxton, guys like that. Second or third best player on this team. Like he's going to play. But are the Nets going to be as incentivized to make him happy or at least give him his prior role in the offense when MPJ is rolling like this? And then you see how Noah Clowney's been playing. Nick Claxton has been, having a career year. Yegor Zhomon has been working well, in that hybrid. Like sometimes he has the ball, sometimes he's off the ball role. Especially when at this point, the starting lineup is Yegor, MPJ, Noah, and Nick Claxton. So when Cam Thomas comes back, does that mean Terrence Mann is now coming off the bench? Now, like or I mean, I don't know if the Nets can get to the point where they'll bring Cam Thomas off the bench, but honestly, it'll be interesting. I wonder where Jordy is going to go with that. To your point,
Yeah, man, it's a puzzle, definitely a puzzle. And another puzzle the GMs and cat managers are trying to solve right now is fitting Giannis's contract because it seems like everyone understandably wants to try to pick him away from the Bucks, especially our friends over the river. So, just kind of in general, Sharif, what do you think about this whole Giannis situation? I know he went down with a calf injury last night. I don't know the severity of that, but we got the Shams report about how they're having an open dialogue about moving him. What's your thoughts on the whole situation? And if the Nets do tie in, where do they tie in?
man, this feels like quite the soap opera, if you will, because and I want to say this has gone back. I know this past summer was probably the first time there were reports from you know Shams and uh, Chris Haynes and people like that of oh, Giannis is really contemplating if his future is in Milwaukee. And then we saw them waive Damian Lillard, but then they signed Miles Turner in free agency. And now he come in, I want to say NBA Twitter was almost shocked because then he gets hurt the same day the latest report comes out, and we saw him look at his calf and we're just like, oh man, is that an Achilles? But according to the reports, it's just a right calf strain. He's out for the next 2 to 4 weeks. But I mean, I don't know what to make of it other than just it's disappointing to see it end up this way because I thought Giannis, and granted, he's been in Milwaukee for the past decade. So I don't ever want to criticize a player for wanting a different situation, especially when, you know, it was so long before the mid 2000s players really didn't move around like that because of the way, contracts were structured and the way free agency worked and all that stuff. But honestly, I'm almost I feel for Bucks fans because I mean they did everything they could to keep Giannis happy, and now it's oh, he wasn't happy about Dame getting waived and all this other stuff. When it comes to the Nets, I'm not sure how they factor in because is it worth trading for Giannis? And I don't mean that in terms of is he good enough to want to trade for him. I think that he's a perennial NBA MVP contender. That question's been answered. But when you look at this team, you still have your pick for next year that hopefully, if you're bad enough, can be Darren Peterson, AJ DeBenza, Cam Boozer, who looks really good right now. Like, do you really want to risk all of that plus probably giving up Michael Porter Jr. and Nick Claxton for Giannis, who might not even be happy being here when it seems like the reports indicate he wants to be with the Knicks? I don't know.
Yeah, I got to be honest. I don't really feel bad for anyone in this situation. I think this kind of makes sense for all parties. I don't think the Bucks did a good job supporting Giannis at all. I think you what did you do? You look at their roster right now. First of all, this is not a playoff roster that he has around him. I know what's it? Ryan Rollins has been playing well, but Amir Coffey, Cole Anthony, Kyle Kuzma, Andre Jackson Jr., like Jericho Sims, Gary Trent. Your big move this year was Miles Turner, who I know he can stretch the floor, but he is a center. Giannis can't shoot the ball at all. His whole thing is driving down. So your big signee is a guy who's going to clog up the lane and bring more defenders into the area where your best player does the most of his damage. I thought that was very bonehead move. And they've had a coaching carousel. Doc Rivers is their coach, who has had nothing but super teams his whole career and has only gotten one ring, and throws his players under the bus. I don't quite get what's going on there. So I think they really caught lightning in a bottle the year that they won it all, and that probably kept Giannis there 2 or 3 years longer than he should have been. And now he's starting to realize that this this front office, kind of isn't a front office that, it can really support him. And he's realizing that. And, he brought them a championship. So he should be able to leave without feeling bad whatsoever. And in terms of Bucks fans, I don't know about you, but in my crossings with Bucks fans, a lot of times they've always just told me like superstars leave, but not Giannis. Giannis is different. And I always say everyone thinks that about their homegrown superstar until they decide, okay, I want to leave. And that's like, okay, they're just like most athletes. Like Kobe Bryant wanted to leave the Lakers. Like people don't talk about that because he just ended up
Thank
staying.
you.
Like this, I'm glad. I've enjoyed the sense of reality that starry-eyed Bucks fans I've seen kind of like have to absorb after this. So that's
Yeah,
just
and no, yeah. To your point, I've had this argument plenty of times. Like, I think everybody wants to say, "Oh, yeah, our guy is different," or and like, even the Kobe stuff when people are like, "Oh yeah, Kobe stayed with the Lakers for 20 years." I'm like, yeah, he also wanted to trade more than a few times. So but yeah, to your point, yeah, it's not that I feel bad for the fans because I guess I disagree with you to a certain degree. Like, I think the Bucks tried, but it's kind of hard when your second best player pops his Achilles
yeah.
as late in the season as he did, and then you're kind of stuck.
I think they tried. They just didn't do a good job. Is what I'm saying.
Fair
I
enough.
I I, th- I don't think they should have traded Damian Lillard for Drew Holiday. I didn't think Dame was going to be as I don't want to say he was bad because he wasn't like bad in Milwaukee, but he wasn't Portland Dame, and obviously he got hurt too. But to give up Drew Holiday and then you trade Middleton for Kyle Kuzma, who's not like a negative asset, but Chris Middleton, I think might even be having a better year than Kyle Kuzma right now. If you want to look at the numbers, like I just think they made a number of questionable decisions, and that's kind of where we're at right now.
That's fair enough. Yeah, I agree with that. I guess that's what I was pushing back on. Like, I do think they tried. It's just because you even look at you know look what the Pacers look like, and granted, part of that equation is that Miles Turner left, but now you don't have Tyrese Halliburton. Like, you still have Pascal Siakam, but it's hard when you have that player on your roster and you can't use them, and they're your best player or second best player. And then you see with the Celtics, they're pretty much a 500 team at this point. But yeah, they've made some moves that did not work out. So I don't blame Giannis for one. I don't blame Giannis for wanting to leave. I guess now it's going to be interesting. Will he even get the trade he wants? Because he at least has to get back on the floor at some point.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Well, we'll definitely watch that and monitor that. I'll say this and then we'll move on. I don't know about you, but I don't regardless of where he goes, when I got that notification, I got kind of giddy. Like there were so many years of like Shams notifications, and it's like, all right, my phone goes off and it's a graphic and it's like, okay, the Hawks plan to sign Garrison Matthews or something. And it's just like, all right, I used to get excited when my phone would buzz and I got a notification. This felt like, it was like 2019 again and big names and drama and, the NBA is the new WWE and all that stuff. This was exciting, So I look forward to seeing how it plays out.
Well, also, did you give your opinion on how the Nets factor in all this? Like, do you think they should go after him? Not like.
Yeah, I mean, I said last year they shouldn't just because I think, the more likely path to a championship is, especially with how much you're going to have to pay Giannis and how your team isn't built with veterans to support him right now. The more likely chance you win a championship is if you take the long route and hit on these picks and build that way, then, slingshot, take a shortcut here. So I still have that, thought process even after the draft. And, what if especially if Giannis wants to go somewhere where I mean the Knicks I believe Sham said that the Knicks window they had their 2 week August window and it was an exclusive week, but now it's over and that's not the case anymore. I also don't think it would make sense for the Nets to help facilitate Giannis trade to the Knicks when they own all their picks. But any other team though who wants him and if Giannis really wants to go there, they're probably going to need help managing around the cap. The Nets should pick up the phone and say, "Hey, do you want to dump some assets here and give us another first round pick?" Because why the hell not? but that's as
Makes
involved as they should get.
makes sense. Yeah, I feel the same way. You don't really need Giannis at this stage of the rebuild anyway.
Yeah, he can come and he can play behind Danny Wolf.
I'm sure he would
That'll
love that.
Yeah. So this is a new segment that Pooch and I started doing a while ago. I don't know about you, but like friends, family, because they know, we're Nets beat writers, we cover the team, we're very involved. Anytime they have a thought on the Nets, I'll just like get a text from like a random friend from home or like an uncle or something, and I like to read them aloud on the pod. So I don't have too much coming off this week, except I did last night. I did get Danny Wolf, America's goated white boy, which got me a good chuckle as I was watching the Nets maintain their win. The other one I got was Michael Porter Jr. as an all-star and building block has a nice ring to it. So not quite as funny, but an interesting thought to ponder, and I think one that a lot of Nets fans have had in the back of their minds watching the team the past 2 weeks. So let's get into this a bit more. How possible do you think either of those things are, Sharif? And if not at all, what's holding him back from accomplishing that?
Well, first I'll address the Danny Wolf, America's goated white boy. I'm pretty sure Luca's got that right now, or Jokic, or Cooper Flag, but we'll say, Danny Wolf has been playing really well recently, and I know Jordy talked about it last night about Danny Wolf when he gets comfortable, he has that like tendency to be the ball's flying all around his body and all over the floor, and then he has like 6 turnovers, but um I like the confidence he plays with. And it makes sense. Danny Wolf played, what, 3 years of college basketball before he came out. So even though he's a rookie, just like, Yegor and Ben Saraf, but, he has more college experience and you can kind of see it when he gets out on the floor. Um, Honestly, I think the only impediment to him, let's say, being the Nets goaded white boy is I don't know. I don't see him ever starting just because he's either playing power forward or center, and I'm guessing it's going to be power forward. But Noah Clowney's been playing so well, so you're at least playing behind him. Now, obviously, Jordy likes to go 9 or 10 deep in the rotation. So if Danny Wolf remains in the rotation, when his team's fully healthy, I mean, it's possible he can get like 20 minutes a game, but that might not give him much runway like the last couple games have. Michael Porter Jr., and actually, because we already talked about the all-star part, I think he is playing like an all-star. I just assume he's not going to get as much love as some
Yeah.
other forwards just because the Nets aren't going to be one of the best teams in the conference or even better teams. But the building block one is the one I want to touch on because I've seen some people saying, well, now that MPJ is playing so well, it's time for him to get out of here. But MPJ is 27. I know like he's not 19, but I think he's still young enough that he can be here. Like, let's say the team is good 3 or 4 years from now. MPJ will be on the wrong side of 30, but that's okay. He'll still be a young 30. And if he's playing like this now, imagine what he could look like if you were able to get a better player around him. Or just like he's not the clear 1A or the clear one. Like, let's say you might be able to get a player that can be a 1B to him. The Nets might have something, but that's just my thoughts on that. Probably hot take again.
No, I had a lot of people text me about and ask me about MPJ and say, look how good this guy is. And they're people who are cognizant of the Nets situation that odds are they would try to flip him for picks. And I always said, he got salary dumped here. He's going to make $40 million next year. Even if he's playing at an all-star level, it's going to be hard to trade for him because it's only the first time he's doing this. And for a team to invest all-star money in a guy, then I think it's especially now with how everyone's pressed up against the cap with the new CBAs and worried about aprons, they're going to really need to believe that, he's worthy of that money. And I think half a season just isn't going to be enough to convince an NBA GM to do that. Having said that, though, he just keeps doing it and doing it and doing it. So I think he's very much so like on his way to justifying that contract. I think the interesting question becomes then, now obviously he's got the next year, but if he keeps playing this way and the Nets want to bring him back, what the hell does that contract look like? Because I can't imagine teams will be lining up to give him another $40 million deal. However, if he plays up to that standard, he's going to think and understandably ask for that kind of money again. And do it kind of gets similar to like a D'Angelo Russell situation when 2019 happened. The Nets had Katie and Kyrie coming in the door, so that made it easy for them to go in that direction. But D'Angelo Russell was, I don't know if it was kind of, but the Lakers dumped him to Brooklyn. Like they were done with him. They wanted to get Lonzo, and so they sent him to Brooklyn, and it was on a good trade for the Nets. And he came to the Nets, and he had the best year of his career. And then he, I don't know if he had the Durant thing. I know they ended up being a sign and trade, so I assume his contract was about to expire. But it's in that similar space where this guy just played great for this year or 2 years. What the hell do we do with him? Because he's kind of earned the opportunity to say, "Hey, I want a lot of money," but at the same time, like if you're a GM and you're building a new team and you want to start winning now, and you're gonna have to bring on other contracts, it becomes you're kind of in a tough wiggle spot. So I wouldn't rule out MPJ being a guy the Nets build around at all. Build around maybe might just mean for the first 2 years where they're a young team trying to win. It doesn't have to be the next 10 years or even the next 5. But I think the money around it, because of his contract situation right now, is going to be the most interesting thing to follow.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think MPJ, he's in an interesting spot because, like you said, this is the first time he's played this well in his career, but this is also the first time he's been in this kind of role.
Yeah.
In Denver, I want to say he's always been the third option. I would say I haven't tracked all the years, but and I mean at some point it's probably a fourth option, depending on where the offense went once they got Aaron Gordon. Um, and I guess if you want to argue, he by the time his contract comes up, which will be next year, he'll be 28 or possibly 29. I don't know when his birthday is. Um, would you want to then re-sign him when you're still going to be young, especially when like the rookies now will be 22, 21, or I guess Yegor would be like 15 by then. But um, I don't know. It's interesting. I think you can go both ways about it. And I know the constant, like, because that was the thing with Cam Johnson, was Cam Johnson had his career year, and then it was like, okay, do we keep him or do we flip him? And I understand you can always go both ways. I just think too many people are dismissive of the building block aspect of MPJ, because I think he has the kind of game you can mold around, regardless of you're a terrible team or you're a team that's like pushing for a play in. I just think he has that kind of style that's just easier to like build a system around, as opposed to like, if he was more like ball dominant, then he would have to be your best player and you would just have to support him. But if he can just be a guy in the corner that can pop off at 30, I mean, that's what Cam was doing, and people wanted Cam to stay. So
Yeah. Yeah. No. You hit the nail right on the head, my friend. So before we wrap up here, I know we did the draft before, but those usually work better with 3 guys. So since it's just us right now, Sharif, we would love to hear your Mount Rushmore of all-time Brooklyn Nets celebrations. I think the last time you were here, we did a jersey draft, so we're going to keep it in the artistical flair department, if you will, to try to connect things here. So, we got D'Lo's ice in the veins, the Mikal Bridges, gun thing. If you had to pick out 4 that are the best for the Nets, what would you roll with?
um hmm. Interesting looking at these candidates. Obviously, D'Lo with ice in my veins. That's an iconic one. Even though he's not the only guy that does it, it was just something about D'Lo because he has that kind of confidence. Um, the Mikal gun thing, I feel bad because towards the end of his time in Brooklyn, he really wasn't doing it.
Everyone was doing it to him. Yeah.
Right, and then he was just like, whatever. So if he had stuck with it, I would put it on the list, but he kind of like faded away because everybody was doing it to him. So I'm gonna take that off the list. You know what? I see here. You know, Joe Harris, the fist bump. That's just gonna go on the list because it's Joe Harris. Joe Harris was the guy, man. Like
Joe Harris, he knew his role. You're not going to do some super flashy, celebration because he's not that guy. But good hard worker, simple
yeah.
fist bump works.
Oh, Katie too small. I mean, I find it okay. This I don't want this to be a tangent. I just want to get this off my chest real quick. I find it funny when it's like 7-footers are like you're too small. It's like, yeah, that's why you're 7 foot.
Yeah.
And I guess four. This is gonna be interesting. You know what? I'll take the Bruce Brown stomp. I think that was indicative to who he was and who he has been throughout his career. Plus, I love Bruce Brown, man. He's like the ultimate like versatile player who's like 6'1", but playing power forward.
Gotcha. So we got the fours: D'Lo, Joe Harris, KD too small, and the Bruce Brown, the tough guy stomp.
Yep.
Gotcha. Yeah, when I was looking up a couple of these to, throw together a little, word bank for you, I didn't kind of think of like the Bruce Brown tough kind of stomp he would do after he would finish a shot. And then when I read about it and then I pictured Bruce Brown on the Nets, I saw it in my head that how often he would have an and one finish and then kind of stomp back on defense. I was like, oh my God, he did do that all the time.
Yeah.
Yeah. The D'Lo one, I agree with you very much on the McHale thing. I think in theory, that's a very cool celebration, but it just got, he had such a bad end to his those last 2 months with the Nets. And I remember when the Suns came to Brooklyn and the Suns came back and ended up blowing out the Nets and Devin Booker went right up to his face and did it. I remember thinking I know they're buddies, but if one of my friends did that to me, I'm smacking that dude in the face. You're pissing me off too much. I'm gonna block you right now. I love you and you're my best friend in the world, but get the hell out of here. So
right.
he's a better man than me. But yeah, he definitely had to eat it back up. And the D'Lo ice in the veins, that just has to be, the George Washington, I think. When I picture D'Angelo Russell, I picture him in a Nets uniform doing that.
Yeah. Plus D'Lo was such a great story for the Nets, and I want to say, I mean, the Nets lore probably goes back further than I'm familiar with, at least before that. But I just feel like that was probably around the time the Nets started getting credit for player development or just guys finding their way in the league with, the Nets coming to Brooklyn and trying to, build a camaraderie there. But yeah, I think it's just when it's ice in my veins, because not many people do that. It's like when Dame Lillard did the Dame time, how many people were doing that? So it was he found something that was unique. And even though D'Lo hasn't always been clutch, it's always cool when he can do it because it happens every once in a while.
Yeah, that it is. Well, Sharif, really appreciate you coming on, man. I thought this was a lot of fun, good conversation. You want to let the people know where you're at, and then we'll wrap this guy up. Let them know where they can find you, read your work, all that stuff.
Yeah. Much appreciated. Guys, you can find, guys and girls, you can find my work at NetsWire on usatoday.com. I mean, I'm pretty sure it's all in the web address. I'm also mainly on Twitter, even though I'm not really a social media person, but I do it for my job. At Sharif Keaton, you can find most of my thoughts will be on net stuff, but I've been getting more active just commenting on the NBA as a whole. I try to be funny, but I don't think it comes across that way. That's okay. But yeah, NetsWire, USA Today, that's where all my work is published. Follow me on Twitter at Sharif Keaton. And follow me all year because I will be tracking this Nets team, whether they're good or not, along with Colin. So,
hell yeah, man. We will certainly be there. Thanks everyone for tuning in today. If you want to follow us, check us out on X, Instagram, TikTok. We're at the Brooklyn Pod. If you want to email us, send us a note, send Pooch a get well card, hit us at thebrooklynpod@gmail.com. Next up, we got the Pelicans coming to town, and I believe a couple West Coast teams will be coming to Barclays Center soon. So we got some good December hoops coming up. We'll see if the Nets can keep this winning going, and we'll talk soon. So peace, Brooklyn.